Okay, good morning. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks to everyone for being here so bright and early on a pretty fall day here in Washington. We are very pleased to have today's discussion of hydrogen and green shipping, zero-emission fuel in the maritime sector. I'm actually particularly interested in learning a lot about this topic today from a couple of different perspectives. Before I get started, I'm Sarah Ladislaw. I direct the Energy and National Security Program here at CSIS, and we are really pleased to have all of you here. I have to do my security warning, which is a security brief that we do before every event here, which is in the event of some sort of alarm or incident, please, myself and some of my colleagues standing in the back will be your security advisors, and we'll tell you how to exit the building, but it's pretty evident from this room. You sort of go back out there, go down the stairs, or you exit this way, and there'll be some emergency exit directions, and we'll direct you from there. We don't anticipate that happening, but just want you to know that we take your security very seriously. I'm particularly pleased to be working with the Norwegian Embassy and bringing this event to you today because I think it's really, really timely. And I'm not going to go into that for too many reasons because I'm going to leave that to my colleague, Adam Cohen. But I don't actually know a huge amount about the topic, and so we had to bring in reinforcements. Adam Cohen is the former Undersecretary for Science at DOE, an affiliate here at CSIS, and knows lots more about this than I do. So he's going to be moderating our expert panel and discussion. But I'm really pleased for a couple of reasons. One, as many of you know, I used to work for a Norwegian company, so I have a soft spot in my heart for all things Norwegian. And secondly, I'm from New England, and there's a New Englander on the panel, so this marries two things that I like very much in addition to energy and science. Without further ado, I am really pleased to have the Norwegian ambassador to the United States. Ambassador Aas is no stranger to those of us here at CSIS. But he was so excited about this project, he wanted to come off and kick off this session personally. So we're very pleased to have you here to make some remarks this morning, Mr. Ambassador. Please join me.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning. It's a great pleasure to see you all here today. A big thank to Sarah, Adam, and the CSIS team for organizing this interesting and timely event with us. And as Sarah said, that CSIS and Norway go a long time back, and I must say that I'm very, very pleased with the partnership we have and the cooperation we have on several areas. So, on today's topic, the ocean has always been the backbone of the Norwegian economy. In fact, our coastline is even longer than the U.S. coastline. Over the last 40 years, a significant part of Norway's wealth has come from offshore oil and gas exploration and production. But long before the oil and gas era, we had ships and fish, and Norway will still always have ships and fish, no doubt about that. Our greatest challenge these days is to avoid dangerous climate change. The Norwegian government has a strategy called green competitiveness. The aim is to reduce emissions while creating jobs and growth. Norway also has an ocean strategy where our aim is to take the blue economy to the next level. Green shipping is a key part of all that. Green shipping is particularly important for three reasons. First, ships have a long life cycle. A ship engaged in international trade normally operates for 25 years before it is recycled. In other words, Norway is thinking long term. We are already developing and launching low-carbon emitting ships in order to meet the low-carbon goals of 2050, by which time Norway will cut its CO2 emissions by 80 to 95%. Second, green shipping offers climate-friendly solutions. In fact, Norway plans to transport more goods by sea than by roads. The green shift will not only have environmental benefits. We expect it to contribute to higher value creation and a competitive advantage for the industry. Thirdly, the shipping sector is one of the areas where Norwegian solutions can make a global difference. We build on centuries of tradition and knowledge combined with advanced technologies. This past summer, a declaration of intent to cooperate on climate change was signed between the State of California and Norway. Zero-emission transportation was an area of priority. I am glad to see that this joint effort is already bearing fruit. Companies on the west coast of Norway and Sandia National Laboratories in California are already in discussions, and they want to participate in a broader cooperation between Norway and California. We are very pleased to see that the Norwegian and Californian researchers, local governments and industry find common ground in developing climate solutions for maritime transport. They are doing great work on hydrogen as a zero-emission fuel. It is my hope and belief that working together across the Atlantic, we can bring along new groundbreaking solutions that will lead the way to a low-carbon economy. This will be good for both the industry and the environment, and we will create tomorrow's jobs. I look forward to interesting and relevant presentations and discussions here today. Our conversation today will give us important insights into how we can promote further cooperation between research, government, and industry in moving green solutions forward. Thank you again for attending today's discussion. Thank you very, very much.
Okay, so as Sarah said, I am Adam Cohn. I'm going to be moderating this event. And let me just introduce myself real briefly. So I am currently the president and CEO of an organization called AUI. AUI is a managing organization, and we run R&D laboratories and facilities, much like the contractors that run Sandia and our other national laboratories. So that's what I do now, and previously I was the Deputy Undersecretary for Science and Energy at the Department of Energy. So I have good familiarity, and I have to admit that I'm somewhat of a closet fan of hydrogen as a solution. Some of the areas that I think we're going to have real difficulty turning into clean areas would be transportation as one and industrial processing as another. And there are certain parts of the transportation sector that can really only be explored as clean in using things like hydrogen. It's not clear how, for example, you're going to get a battery to run an airplane or a battery to run a ship. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not possible, but it's much clearer, at least in my mind, to look at how you could imagine hydrogen serving this. And so that brings us to this panel. It's extremely interesting to explore this idea, and it's great to see all of the activities that are being pursued, because I really think hydrogen is a game changer, and we need to pursue it with a lot of vim and vigor, if you will. So with that, I'm going to introduce the panel, and then each of the panel members is going to take a few minutes, 10-ish minutes, to give a talk and give their perspectives on this topic, and then we're going to have a couple of discussions in terms of a panel discussion, and then I'll open it up to Q&A. And certainly if there are any burning questions, please either whisper it, write it down, or, or make sure I can see you, so I will call on you at an appropriate time. So with that, let me introduce the panel members. To my far right, or far left, is Elizabeth Boe. She is the project manager for Hydrogen Region Sogn and Fjordane, and she will talk a little bit about their activities with regard to what they're doing in terms of production and use and growing the economy from a hydrogen perspective. Next to me is Joe Pratt, who is a principal member of the technical staff at Sandia National Laboratory, and we'll talk about the R&D that they are pursuing. And then Lars Gimmestad, he has just recently joined the Brodrain AG company. I apologize if I mispronounce it. My Norwegian pronunciation is not as good as it should be. But he is the deputy CEO, and he can give his perspective on what the company is doing in terms of production of the fleet and the types of storage technologies that are going to be needed. And then Martin Grimnes is the president of Arcadia Alliance, which is a newly created joint venture company focused on introducing and marketing environmentally friendly carbon fiber tanks and vessels. So with that, I will turn it over to Elizabeth.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the invitation to come here, and I would also like to thank the Royal Norwegian Embassy and the CSIS for organizing this event. I'm going to talk to you about initiative in Sogn og Fjordane, a region on the west coast of Norway. In a way, you can say that this is a direct response, a practical and very hands-on approach to the government policy when it comes to energy transition, when it comes to tackling climate change, and when it comes to green competitiveness. Hydrogen region of Sogn og Fjordane has a purpose. We are going to create basically a living lab for local hydrogen value chains in Sogn og Fjordane. I'm going to explain a little bit more about what we put into that concept with the local value chains and the living lab. I'm going to say a little bit about the region first. As you can see, we're located on the west coast of Norway, and this is our backyard. We have a harsh coastline with lots of storms and wind. We have high mountains. The water is coming down those mountains and creates very good opportunities for us to produce hydropower. So we are mostly hydropower based, but also some wind. So, and the geography can be challenging. Some of the most remote areas in Norway are in Sogn og Fjordane, and it's sparsely populated. So, but this makes up for actually a very good place to have hydrogen value chains, because in order to produce clean hydrogen, you need a lot of electricity and you need a lot of water. So you split the water and your product would be hydrogen, oxygen, and heat. So, and this can be used as fuel, for example, within the maritime sector, can be used within the industry to make it cleaner and greener, and can be used as energy storage so that you're not dependent on the grid, for example. So being a living lab for these kinds of technologies, basically we have a history with that. In Norway, we initiated quite a lot of the development when it comes to liquid natural gas. We also are on a good way of electrifying the ferry sector, for example. The first fully electric car ferry was made in Norway a couple of years ago, and we see basically a revolution now with 50 more ferries to come within 2020, and 50 out of 130 ferries in Norway would be electric by 2020. So all this is helped by public procurement, basically. So Norway has a good tradition with that. So basically, just to sum up why we are working with hydrogen. We have lots of renewable energy in our region. Most of that, or at least a good share of that, is either exported through the grid or it's trapped inside bottlenecks in the regional grid. And following up on the government strategy with more local use of that renewable energy, hydrogen production and local use of that hydrogen is one of the solutions. So the surplus energy will be used into a new energy systems thinking. It can save us costs by producing hydrogen and use it, for example, where the grid doesn't go, or if the grid connection is poor or the capacity is not good. When it comes to local value chains, we have the perspective that this is going to create new local jobs within the traditional industries, but also it will help us build up a competence within the green economy of the future. So I'll explain more about the local value chains later, but also the tackling climate change part of it is important to us. We do have a big maritime sector also within the public transport sector. If we take the I think it's 12 high-speed passenger vessels that we have in operation in our county. If we would put all of those on zero-emission technology, we would actually cut 55% of our CO2 emissions from the public transport sector in Sogn og Fjordane. So we do a lot of commuting on the water, and it makes sense to us to work with this first. But the Living Lab is more than just technology. It's more than the nature that we have and the natural resources. It's also working with education, the R&D sector, businesses, and also the international collaboration that we have with different partners is what makes up the Living Lab for hydrogen value chains in our region. So, how could a local value chain, hydrogen value chain, look like? The important thing to emphasize here, I think, is that this is a pretty immature value chain yet. In Sogn og Fjordane, we haven't deployed any of this technology yet. We have a lot of promising prospects, and we think that this can be something that could create jobs in the future. But we need to do something to accelerate this, to make it happen. So we are trying to stimulate the market through different end users. Working with different end users of hydrogen makes sense because we have the power, the electricity, and we have the water. So we need someone who can produce the hydrogen and make it useful in different sectors. And we're looking for crossover effects. For example, when you look at the fish farming industry, a lot of the critics against hydrogen is that it's not as energy efficient as using batteries. So it makes sense to use batteries wherever you can. If you can't use batteries, either because it's too heavy or it's too energy demanding operation, for example, with high-speed passenger vessels, you can use hydrogen. To be able to take back some of the energy loss, we are looking into using oxygen and heat, which is a byproduct from the hydrogen production process, into fish farms, because the fish farms need oxygen in their water and a stable temperature to make the fish eat more and grow bigger. So this is an isolated business opportunity, but when you see it in connection with the hydrogen value chain, it makes sense from a business perspective. So we're working with these kinds of crossover effects. And my job is basically to connect the dots and try to make all these businesses in Sogn og Fjordane. Don't worry about the logos, it might be confusing. But my job is to connect the dots and create the bigger picture. So this can be the Living Lab that we want it to be if these people manage to cooperate. So one of the main objectives of the project is to create business opportunities for local businesses. So we have set aside some funds with the county municipality where we basically support local businesses working together to be able to realize some of the potential within the hydrogen value chains. So this is, for now, the portfolio that we have. We have 4 more projects in the pipeline. I mentioned the fish farming industry. That's a very, very important focus area for us, but also the microgrids. If we can save some of the costs with upgrading the grid or building new grid lines by producing and storing and distributing hydrogen instead, that will be very cost efficient when it comes to a society perspective on it. And the ports are important to us. So I think that the coastline and the ports, the harbors in Sogn og Fjordane will be more or less a hub for everything else going on in our county when it comes to hydrogen. So I'm going to talk a bit about our flagship project. This is something that we are very proud of. This vessel, hopefully, it's been developed and designed by Brødrene Aa. And we hope to be able to finance and build it, and that it's operative within 2021. It's funded by the county municipality and Innovation Norway. And it's part of DNVGL green shipping program in Norway. I believe you have an initiative going on in the States as well on trying to make this happen here. The Maritime Association of Sogn og Fjordane is project manager for this vessel, and the consortia is made out of really strong business partners. And I think also the main reason why we are here is that we have a strong collaboration with Sandia National Laboratories and our sister project, the SF Breeze in San Francisco. So, as you can see, the hydrogen tanks are on top there, and that's for safety reasons. So, if we have a leakage, the hydrogen will go up through the air, and the risk will be reduced. So, I have a folder with some information about this ship, and there is contact information there for me and for Lars, and also for the project manager for this specific vessel. So that was it for me. Thank you.
So Joe.
Let's see, this way? Okay, there we go. Great, well, thank you for having me here. Thank you, Karina and Paul at the Norwegian Embassy for organizing this event, and thank you, CSIS, for hosting it. So, let's see, just quickly before I get into the presentation, Sandia National Laboratories, for those who don't know, is one of the United States' 3 national security labs. We're within the Department of Energy. Our job really is to provide accurate and unbiased technical expertise for the nation in the interest of national security. In this case, we're talking about energy and climate security. My colleague Lenny Klebanoff there in the back and I both lead the Zero-Emission Maritime program at Sandia, which was started about 5 years ago. So today I'm going to present very briefly some of the things we've learned over that time in green maritime, and also some thoughts about U.S. Norway collaboration going forward. Before I get into that, I want to briefly introduce hydrogen and fuel cells, because many people like to say, oh yeah, I already know about that, but we've found that many people don't. So just to make sure we're on the same page, what is hydrogen? What is a fuel cell? This will be very brief. Hydrogen, you can think of it as very similar to natural gas. In the United States, many of us have natural gas in our homes. Hydrogen is a fuel, very much like that. The properties of how it behaves, how it burns, and things like that are very similar. You can look at the natural gas molecule there. It's actually 80% hydrogen, so it kind of makes sense that these two things are very similar. There is one important difference, and that's that other 20%, which in natural gas, mostly methane there, is carbon. So when you use methane, you get not only water, that's where the hydrogen goes, turns into water. You also get carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas. Hydrogen, on the other hand, when you use it, you get not only energy, but water, and that's it. Hydrogen by itself is not a toxic gas, it's not a greenhouse gas, and if you spill it, for example, liquid hydrogen, while you're fueling your boat and you have a leak and it spills into the water, it's going to immediately evaporate, go up at about 45 miles an hour, straight up into the sky. It's so light it actually escapes the Earth's atmosphere and leaks into space. So it's the only potential maritime fuel that will completely remove itself from the ecological environment in case it's spilled. So that's a little bit about hydrogen. Hopefully that helps. Fuel cells, there's a picture of a fuel cell from one manufacturer. There's many manufacturers in the world that produce fuel cells. They all look kind of the same. It looks like a computer rack, a server rack. That's pretty much what it is. It's a piece of electronics. It takes hydrogen and air in. It doesn't combine them, but it just reacts them in a similar way as batteries react chemicals, and it makes electricity and water. There's some pictures there of fuel cell cars. So that the picture on the top is a stationary power system for backup power. The pictures on the bottom are cars that are commercially available today from 3 major manufacturers. There's fuel cell buses. So hydrogen fuel cells, these things are out there today. They're being used all the time. It's commercially available technology. Why are we thinking about hydrogen and fuel cells in the maritime industry? Why are we talking about zero emissions? Here's a couple charts from IMO greenhouse gas study done in 2014. The chart on the left shows the worldwide shipping trend from the past 30 or 40 years, and then the expected increases just due to industrialization of the world. You can see that it's a quite sharp increase in shipping, maritime shipping needed. There's a corresponding increase in emissions that's associated with that, and that's the chart on the right there. What do these numbers mean? It's hard to quantify or hard to get a feel for millions of tons of carbon dioxide. What is that? Just to put a little bit of context around it, 1,700 million tons of carbon dioxide, which is the chart on the right about halfway up. That's roughly the amount that comes out of all the United States power plants in a year. Or it's roughly the amount that comes out of all the cars in the United States in a year, somewhere around there. So that puts it a little bit of context. According to this chart, if we do this business as usual scenario in the maritime industry, we'll get to that in about 2035, 2040. Business as usual, I think, is an interesting term, and I want to explore that a little bit. Before I do, I want to read this quote from a report to the U.S. National Academy of Sciences. It says, "There is evidence that the greatly increasing use of fossil fuels is seriously contaminating the Earth's atmosphere with CO2. It is possible that this is already producing a secular climatic change in the direction of higher average temperatures. This could have profound effects both on the weather and on the ecological balances." Now, I know what you're thinking. I've heard that before. What? Tell me something new. Okay, so when did you hear that? When did you first hear about that? This report that I'm quoting was written in 1962. What have we done since then? That was over 50 years ago. That's business as usual. That's what they mean by that. We haven't done much. And if we continue to not do much, then we're going to be on that business as usual path. I look at that little red arrow that says you are here, and I see a fork in the road coming up. We can stay on the business as usual path, or we can choose the low one there, the efficiency improvements and use of non-fossil fuels. I think this is something that every nation, every city, every company, every person, each one of you can look at and make a choice. Which path do you want to take going forward? It's hard to do hydrogen and fuel cells in marine. Those are big ships. That's what I hear. You can't do that. That's crazy. It's got to be fuel oil, diesel, etc. We just completed a study. It should be on our website next week. You can download it. It shows that all of these vessels on this page can be powered by hydrogen fuel cells, many of them also by batteries. From small fishing boats to the largest container ships in the world. How can that be? These require lots of power, lots of energy to get across the ocean. Well, conveniently, there's a trend in the shipping industry that the more power and the longer the voyage, actually the bigger the ship. So it gives you more room to put on the hydrogen and fuel cells. And I'm not talking about changing that entire ship over and getting rid of all the containers or something like that. I'm talking about fitting these components in the existing envelope of weight and volume of the current engine room and fuel tanks, without changing anything else on the ship. We also have done a few more detailed studies, so that was a pretty high-level study. Elizabeth mentioned the SF Breeze. This was a study Lenny and I completed last year. Really a deep dive into, could you do a high-speed passenger ferry, 35 knots, 150 passengers, run it only on hydrogen fuel cells? The answer turned out to be yes, you can. It would float. I see some Coast Guard folks in here. We work with them very closely to ensure that it would be acceptable from a regulatory point of view. We examined the economics of it, and we showed not only that it's possible, but exactly how to do it, working with the naval architect and drawings, things like that. Has zero emissions, zero fuel spills, low noise, no fumes, no diesel odor, and the throttle response actually would be quicker than diesel. Lenny just completed another study, a deep dive into a larger vessel, this time an ocean-going boat, 2,400-mile range of 15 days. In this particular case, it's a research vessel designed to accommodate the requirements of Scripps Institution of Oceanography in California. But the idea here is showing again that you've got different types of boats. This is not just for small coastal boats. You can do this on long-range vessels as well. And here you're actually getting some benefits for the science community. Low noise, no airborne emissions, no soot, which is important if you're going to the Arctic, and no possibility of fuel spills. So that's a brief overview of what we've done so far and where can we go. I think it's a fantastic idea to have a collaboration between the U.S. and Norway because we're all working towards the same goals. Some of these things I've shown on here are the same things Elizabeth put on her slide. Working together, we can more efficiently create new technology, training, strengthen the industry through the technology that we bring to it, provide jobs locally, and then ultimate goal is clean maritime transportation. And that's, let's see, I think there's contact information. You can visit our website and download some of these reports. And I want to thank the Maritime Administration's Maritime Environmental and Technical Assistance Program for supporting the SF Breeze and Zero-V studies as a way to strengthen the U.S. Shipbuilding industry and the merchant marine through technology. Thank you very much.
So, Lars.
Yeah, let me just start off while they're fixing the technical issues. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I would like to thank the embassy and also CSIS for having me. It's a great honor to be here. I'm going to shift the focus a little bit in my presentation, where I've talked about hydrogen so far. I will talk more generally about our products. What are we bringing to the table in terms of moving towards a lower emission and zero emission future? So how our products are the basis for that. I represent Brødrene. It's a long line of syllables pronounced in a very short amount of time, I know. So I can stick to the Å brothers here because that's what the word means. So it's two brothers founded a company some 70 years ago in a small fjord on the western coast of Norway in the county where Elizabeth gave her presentation from. And you would say that to build boats in a small fjord on the western coast, how can you survive? Well, the vision of those two founders were that In order to succeed, you will have to build the best boats in the world. You have to be in the forefront on technology, on innovations and everything. And because if a customer takes the travel to this far out place, why should they do that if we didn't get the best boat available? So here, the two brothers, that's the focus from the beginning, and that's what we are sticking to now. I'm not going to try to sell you any boats here, but I'm talking about our products and try to relate them to the future we're talking about. So this is the essence of the company now. Since 2002, we've been building boats in carbon fiber, various types of boats, monohulls and catamarans, but they're all built in carbon fiber, and that's what yields sort of the environmental effect here, that we build lighter vessels, which yields both less fuel consumption and also less cost, and of course less emissions. Not a big company in U.S. terms, but we're one of the big players on a global scale in terms of high-speed ferries. This is sort of our main product. To sum up, it's a 40-meter, 130 feet. Goes at about 30 to 40 knots, depends on the engines. It's a lot of weight being pushed forward on water, so it all comes down to energy. And how do you minimize the use of energy in that term? Well, you have to have a hull which is optimized. So this one has a very, sharp hull, charges easily through the water, and it also built in carbon fiber. This one weighs about 20 to 30 tons less than a similar ferry would weigh as an aluminum ferry. So you gain a lot of advantage, and that lessens the need for energy to move it forward. So what are we doing in terms of the green shift? Well, the first step is this has to be done in shifts, just like in the car industry where you move from fossil fuels to hybrids, to battery, and then to hydrogen. That's what we are trying to do here as well. So we have built this ferry. It's a sightseeing ferry. It's currently under operation in the Sognefjord as a sightseeing boat. It's a hybrid with a diesel engine and a battery. It can run on batteries for 2-3 hours, around 10-12 knots. And it operates in an area which is part of the World Heritage, it's on the World Heritage list. So the operator wanted to go clean in that area. So that's why we built it as a zero-emission ferry, partly, because in that area we can shift to batteries and the boat can go without any emission at all. And it has been a great success for the operator. Hybrid, no big issue that. It's a battery package, it's a diesel engine, and it's a battery engine, and it's a plug-in hybrid, so we charge it when it's docked, and also it can produce electricity on board with the diesel engine. Fairly small engine, it's like a big truck engine, 1,000 horsepower, 2 of them, one in each hull, and a battery package. So that's basically the installments in the installation. Well, the next step. This one is under construction in our yard as we speak. This is the fully electric version of it. So the battery technology is evolving very fast. So this time around, we are able to put just batteries into the ship. It will operate on the same route, the same area, but now the range is long enough for us to operate fully electric. But then comes one challenge. When you go to the dock and you need to charge it, what about the grid? And despite that we are in a region where we produce a lot of electricity, the grid does not have the capacity to charge a ship like that in a short amount of time. So in order to leverage that, we have come up with this one, which is a power dock, and it's the same thing as the power pack you have when you're on the go with your phone, but this one is for a ship. So this power dock will soon go into production and be delivered with the boat in April. And this one will sort of take power from the grid at a lower rate. And then when the ship docks, it can fast charge from the power dock and also take from the grid at the same time. So that makes it possible to charge the boat in 20 minutes. Many of these installations you find onshore, but the new thing here is that we just put it in the water. So it is a power dock. So it's a product that we are launching now, and that makes it possible to sort of leverage off the challenges with the grid in terms of deploying electric ferries at different places. And it can also charge other things like cars, buses, and so forth. And now we're moving on to other concepts, like in the Oslo Harbor Basin, they are looking at going zero in a couple of years. So we have to position ourselves in terms of having concepts that are so as far as I know now, is the cost of operational cost in terms of the cost of hydrogen, and also some rules and regulations when it comes to installing hydrogen on passenger ferries, which is still not solved fully. So that's what we do. I'm going to give the stage over to Martin, which is our representative in the States, and he's going to go elaborate a little bit more on the carbon and the effects it has on emissions.
I have been, and again, thank you very much for the opportunity to present the embassy and CSIS for allowing us to be here. But anyway, I have been involved with the composites industry starting out in the marine business for some over 30 years, and have had a relationship with Brothers Zoll for well over 20 years, and been watching their technology. Now, take the state of Maine. It's the oldest shipping building state in the U.S. We've been building ships and vessels for over 400 years. And I've been saying, we need to bring this technology to the U.S., and how do we best do that? Now, with that, we have formed a joint venture company called Arcadia Alliance, which is between Brothers O and their technology that they have developed over all these years. And we've been searching for a long time for the right shipyard in Maine that had the capabilities of building with composites in the sizes and the technologies required. And that was Front Street Shipyard in Belfast, Maine. A very young company, but very, very capable. Here you have a picture from the facility where they're taking up to 500-ton vessels in their travel lift and move them right inside their facility. And this is where we are going to construct carbon fiber ferries based in the relationship with Brothers O in the great state of Maine. Now, you can say, why carbon fiber? And we don't have to go very far in the United States to figure out why. Go and knock on the doors of Boeing Aerospace. They can today not build a competitive aircraft that can compete with Airbus, and Airbus is in the same boat, so to say. They utilize carbon fiber in the constructions of their fuselage, of their wings, in order to take weight out. And not only to take weight out, but also strengthen the aircraft, give it longer longevity. The fatigue properties of a composite structure dwarfs that of any metal structure. So why carbon fiber? We can reduce drastically the weight over a traditional vessel. And as Lars has mentioned many a time, what do we provide to the maritime industry, whether it's diesel propulsion, whether it's electric propulsion, whether it's hybrid, or now hydrogen? We give them a head start. We take a ton of weight out of the vessel, allowing you to install a lesser weighing propulsion system. What does that mean? That directly also means in reduced fuel cost And what does reduced fuel cost mean? It also means a significant reduction in CO2 and NOx. We have I have another slide later on where we have an operator that operates today some 80 ferry boats. They have 10 composite vessels built in carbon fiber from Brothers O, and they have 10 equal size, equal capacity, equal speed, and they reduce their maintenance cost by some 50 to 60% on the external hull maintenance cost. And what does that mean? That means that these vessels live forever. If you go to the marine industry today, there are vessels out there that are 60 years of age and they're on their third engine, but the hull is as good as it was when it was built in the late 50s or early 60s. And here you have a picture from the yard, but these two ferries belong to Norled, which operates, as I said, 80 vessels, and 10 of those of equal size to the aluminum ones have reduced their maintenance cost drastically. Now, what's it mean to build a vessel in composite? One of the things that traditionally constructing in composite was not the cleanest process in the air. It contains styrene, which is an off gas that we don't want to emit into the atmosphere. So what you see here is a newly developed process called vacuum infusion. You lay up all the reinforcing material, all the carbon fiber. Then you seal it with a vacuum bag, and you pull vacuum on it, and you let it sit on the vacuum for some hours. And once you've had it under vacuum and ensure that you have full vacuum and no air in the laminate, you open the valves to let the resin system in. And in a matter of a few hours, you will pull out a 130-foot vessel fully constructed. So it's quite a revolutionary process in itself, and it's clean. Now back to the comparison between what's it mean to build in aluminum and what's it mean to build in carbon fiber. As you see here, here are two equally sized vessels, same number of passengers, same speed, but the engine requirement, this being diesel engines, MTUs from Mercedes, is cut in half. And the energy requirements as the engine size is more or less cut in half. That translates in a dollars and cents savings. Here you have upwards to almost $1 million saved fuel cost per annum. And the fuel savings is drastic. You have up to 40%, and of the two ferries that I showed in the previous slide, those ran for a full year documenting the consumptions and the data from both vessels for over a year. So it's not just a one-day comparison. It is for over a year. And again, the CO2 emission translates to the same as the fuel savings emissions of 40%. We haven't seen over 40%, but we traditionally see anywhere between 30 to 40%. So, as has been said many a time here, and the president of the Red and White Fleet, he keeps saying that you can buy this technology on Amazon, but this is not new technology. It is all here today. The carbon fiber construction is all here today. How to do it is all here today. The hydrogen technology is here today. We can do it. This is a quick video of the vision of the fjord. So it's all here today. It's not revolutionary, and we can do it. And we would like to bring this project to the state of Maine. Thank you. He's going to continue.
I was just going to say, well, it's a wrap-up, actually. The choice between the different propulsion system is a matter of the variables we've listed there. So We see this as a step-by-step process where we move towards hydrogen, but you have to take these steps in terms of the cost of everything and the development of technology. So but what we are bringing to the table, that's a lighter vessel, because that's a head start. That's where you have to start. So I'm just going to end with this small video showing the vision of the future. Thank you.
So I don't know if we're going to raffle off a trip, but if we are, I'm definitely going to get a ticket because I want to go see those fjords on that boat. So that's actually pretty spectacular. So let me start off because I want to have a couple of discussions first, and then I'll open it up to Q&A. I know that, Martin, you made a comment that it's all here today, but given my experience, there are always areas that aren't exactly ready for prime time or are not necessarily fully scalable, and they may not be technological. So I'd like each of you or whoever feels comfortable commenting on where you see breakthroughs that are necessary, whether they're in the technological area, say in the production or distribution or use of hydrogen, or whether they're in the regulatory area, or it's a marketing thing, or it's a timing. I mean, I really just want to get a good sense as to where we are today and where you see the industry exploding going forward.
I have one comment, and it's not very. Oops. I have one comment, and it's not very scientific, but it goes back to Dances with Wolves or whatever. Build the first one, and they shall come.
For the record, that's Field of Dreams, but yeah.
Same actor.
Same actor? Yeah.